baby! Almost well versed. We're back. Welcome, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Almost Well Versed. Thank you for your patience. I know I took a hiatus for December, but come on, guys. It was the holidays. Like my brother was in town, and then Christmas happened, and New Year's was here. Just had to spend some time with the family and the hubs and my brother and my other brother, my brother-in-law. But guys, it's 2020. We're back. I've got a big year planned, and I can't wait. Starting this podcast last year was so fun. It's really become a little passion project of mine, and the feedback has been, you guys are so nice. All of my listeners out there, I love you. Thank you for tuning in every other week. I really appreciate it. But let's just jump right in, guys. So instead of jumping right into a new review, I thought it would be pretty cool to go over my favorite books from last year. I don't know if anyone ever did it, but if you follow me on Goodreads, Goodreads is this really cool app. It's also a website where you can track books that you read. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's just a nice resource where you can search books and you can leave reviews and you can set reading goals and you can update them through the year. So I know I mentioned a couple times that my reading goal was 40 books for last year. I ended up just being short. I think I ended up with 37 books, which is still a lot. That's the most I've read in recent history. So I'm still pretty proud. This year I upped my goal. I know I didn't hit 40, but this year we're aiming for 42. And I'm confident. We're going to make it, But yeah, on Goodreads, you can see all the books I've ever read. I have them broken up for books that I've read or that I've done for the podcast or just, books I've read in the past. But yeah, so I'm kind of going off of that list. That's the way I kept track of what I read last year. And so looking through that list, I was like, man, let's go through, let me pick my 5 favorite books from last year. And I'll kind of just, we're going to have fun today. I'm not going to super go into each of the books. A couple on this list I might do an episode on. So I'm going to keep them kind of vague, but just kind of give you, a brief summary and then why it made it on the list. I do have some honorable mentions that couldn't make it onto the list for whatever reason, and we'll get into those. But let me just preface my list, okay? We've got top 5 of the year. Great. Fine. I read 36 books. That shouldn't be too difficult. But here's the thing. I picked these top 5 based on a couple criteria. Number 1, I didn't include any books that were a reread. So any books that were on my read list for 2019 that I've read before, I didn't include on this list. And then I also, out of principle, there's one author in particular that I read a lot last year. And pretty much he could have been numbers 1 through 5 on my list, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to be fair to all the books I've read. So, Brando Sando, I had to leave you off a couple times, man. I had to be fair, okay? Look, so I say all that to say, let's jump into our list, y'all. So number 5, hot number 5. I really wish I had sound cues, but whatever. Number 5, we've got a book called Jitterbug Perfume. This book was written by a dude named Tom Robbins all the way back in 1984. And this book was very weird. This was actually one of the first books I read last year. I found it super cheap at Ed McKay, and then I looked it up and it has really good reviews. But this book was so strange, y'all. So if you look up the summary for it, it's described as both an epic and a saga, which I would agree with. It's it follows a dude. So the book starts with this king named Alabar. And in his kingdom or whatever, the way it works is when you get chosen as king or you become king, you're usually pretty young and you're supposed to have the heart of a warrior and you're supposed to be strong and manly and whatever. And then as soon as you start exhibiting aging, so as soon as you start having wrinkles or start having gray hair, they kill you and replace you with a younger king. And so King Alabar, it starts with him finding a gray hair and he's like, oh shit, but I'm not done being king. I like being king, you know? So he's like plucking out his gray hairs and he's trying to like keep up the facade as long as possible. But then finally, I guess, you know, somebody sees his gray hair and like alerts the town or the village or whatever, and they plan to have this, they do like a grand funeral procession thing whenever they like kill you. I want to say they burn you up. I'm pretty sure they burn you up. But Alabar, I mean, he wasn't done being king, you know, so he like fakes his death and he gets out of there, and he ends up running into a goat god named Pan, and he's got a lute, and he's like the god of like sex, I guess. Like he's really promiscuous, and he's all about free love and, you know, living your life how you want. And he also stinks really bad, so you can like tell when he's coming. But so yeah, Alabar just ends up teaming up with Pan, and Alabar's he's pretty much looking for like the secret to longevity. Like, you know, like a fountain of youth situation. There's like, Pan tells him of some fabled drink or something that's supposed to let you live forever. And so Alabar, he sets off in search of this potion or whatever. This book was weird. I will say, like, while I was reading it, so two things. One, time is a bit wibbly wobbly in this book, which I really enjoy. I do really enjoy that in books, where like the characters may be, you know, moving from different time periods and whatever. So there is like some time travel stuff, which some people can get behind. I really enjoyed it. But I will say that his writing style reminded me a lot of Kurt Vonnegut, who, if you're not familiar with, he's another big like cult classic writer. My favorite book by him is Slaughterhouse-Five. That's a really weird book. People either love it or hate it, and I really feel like that's how Jitterbug Perfume is. You're either gonna love it or you're gonna think it's too weird, it's too rambly, but I enjoyed it, and that's why it's number 5 on my list. Okay, this is my list. So number 4, moving on, guys. Number 4, we've got a nice little book. This one was called The Murmur of Bees, and it was written by Sofia Segovia in 2019, which I didn't realize. I know I did a couple books from that Amazon collection that was celebrating authors around the world, and this was another one. This was actually the first one from that collection I read, and it was actually the book that kind of prompted the idea of me doing a podcast about books. It's another one of those lovely books. I know I described About the Night as a lovely book, and funnily enough, I kind of had to pick between About the Night and Murmur of Bees of which one I wanted to include, because they're not similar. Like, the subject matter isn't similar, but just like the feeling the books gave you was similar. But Murmur of Bees ended up edging it out, just because, I don't know, that book just really spoke to me, you know? Yeah, so this book is set in a little small Mexican town back in 1918, and it follows this little boy named Semenio Pio. I really can't say his name. Semenio Pio. Who, when they find him, he gets rescued like as a little baby, and when they find, like, he was like, they like find the baby like on the side of the road, right? He was like discarded, and then when they find him, he was actually like covered in bees. Like, a swarm of bees was just like on him, and everyone was freaking out. They're like, oh, it's a devil child, oh, he's like been kissed by the devil. But he just like has this weird nice relationship with bees, and like as the book goes on, you start to wonder, like, is this like a magic-y situation? Is it, you know, like, it could be like a based on true story type book, but then when he has the interactions with the bees, you're like, wait, this isn't real. But that's irrelevant. But yeah, so this little boy, Simone Pio, he doesn't speak because he has a cleft lip. And because of that cleft lip, like, a lot of other people, like a lot of the adults and the other kids are scared of him. And, you know, it was pretty taboo back then if you had like a disfigurement like that. You were usually like shunned or not included, but the family who found him, they kind of just like adopted him as their own and really like raised him and loved him and cared for him. And he has like a really special connection with his family, with the grandma who found him. And then as the book goes on, you learn about the bees. Like the bees help him in a lot of situations, and he's able to like know where stuff is or where people are when he shouldn't, because the bees are helping him. But it was a little strange, like that whole thing. Like I said, like you can't really tell, is it magic-y or is it real? But I really enjoyed it. This book was really nice. It was a short read. I cried like 3 times in it. That tells you how many feelings are in this book. But I really enjoyed this book. That's why I ended up at number 4. All right. Number 3, guys. We're moving into the big boys. So top 3 was tough. Okay. I read a lot. Like I said, I read 37 books last year. And number 3 was tough to narrow down, Like when I made this list, I already knew what number 1 was going to be. I already knew what number 2 was going to be, but there was a lot of contenders that could have made it for number 3, okay? So my number 3, I ended up going with Warbreaker, written by the man, the legend, everybody needs to get on him, Brandon Sanderson, aka Brando Sando, aka our Lord and Savior, okay? Warbreaker was written back in 2009, and it follows 2 sisters who are both princesses. One of the sisters is betrothed to a guy named the God King, and if that name tells you anything, he's like the man, okay? He's some mythical, renowned, feared God King. He's like immortal. People think he has power. Like he probably has powers. I mean, he's the fucking God King, And so when the sister finds out that she's betrothed to him, she's terrified, right? And okay, let me back up. One sister was supposed to be betrothed, like the older sister was, pretty much raised her whole life, bred to be the wife to this God King, okay? But then when the time comes, like when she becomes of age and they're like, okay, it's time for her to like go off to the capital to be and marry the God King, the dad kind of has like second thoughts. And so instead of the older sister getting married to the God King, he sends the younger sister. And the older sister is hurt. She's hurt because one, like, am I a joke to you? Like she was raised her whole life to be the wife to this God King. And then they're like, nope, we're going to send your sister. So there's that. And then she's also really scared for her sister because she wasn't raised in preparation to be the wife of the God King. So she's kind of getting thrown into the wolves, So the older sister, she heads out to try and rescue her from the situation, and trouble ensues, The cool thing about this book is there is magic. There's a lot of magic, okay? If you know me, I fucks with fantasy. I like all that stuff. Magic, elves, whatever. If it's fake, I like it. And so in this book, the magic system is something called breath. And breath is an essence that can only be collected like 1 unit at a time, right? And as the book goes on, you learn more about breath, about who can use it. Most people are born with like their one breath, like their one essence. It's not your, like it's different from your soul, but like it's your essence, like it's part of you. It's what makes you jovial. It's what makes you feel, like, but then some people, for whatever reason, they can handle more than one breath, and breath is almost used, in some ways, it's almost used like a currency. Like you can like, hey, if you promise not to fuck with us, I'll give you my daughter's breath situation. And when that happens, like that daughter, she wouldn't die, but she would physically look gray. She would kind of be drab. She would not be animated. You know what I mean? Like you're still a person, but not as much of a person. I'm kind of doing a bad job explaining it, but it's one of those situations where I don't want to go too deep because it'll spoil like a lot of the journey of learning about the magic in the book, But I did really enjoy this magic system. And here's the thing with Brandon Sanderson, man. He writes so much. Like, if you go to Google and type in his name, you'll see this man is a monster. Like, he writes so much. And the thing is, each book and each series that he writes are so different. Like, he's able to come up with these intricate, detailed magic systems and societal structures and storylines. And then you'll read another book of his and it'll be completely different, but it'll be just as deep, you know? And that's why I say Brando Sando is that boy, okay? He is that man. Warbreaker, fire. That book was so good. And I was gonna say it's not too long, but it is. It's like 600 something pages. But compared to his other books, it's not that long. So for me, I was like, oh, this is pretty short. So it wasn't that big of a commitment. Definitely check out Warbreaker. It's nice because it's a one-off. It's a standalone story. You get invested pretty early because you're like, oh man, what's gonna happen to this daughter? Like, the older sister, she's not a warrior. She's a princess. Like, what is she gonna do trying to save her sister? Like, trying to break her out from the God King, okay? Good luck. But anywho, that was Warbreaker. We're moving right along. Like I said, guys, today we're just taking it sleazy. We're just having a good time. I'm just talking. Number two was tough. I know I said that I knew what number 2 was going to be, but it was still tough because there are some good books I read last year, okay? Number 2, I ended up going with Saga Volume 9. Okay, if you are one of my longtime listeners, you know that we did a Saga episode with Daz, aka Anthony, aka Hubs, and I love Saga. If you couldn't tell from that episode, we both fucks with Saga, okay? He isn't caught up, the heathen. He's not caught up. He hasn't read Volume 9, and I've owned it for a year. I don't know what he's doing, but whatever. He'll get to it. But Volume 9, y'all, this one came out, it came out like mid-2018, and if you remember, Saga is written by Brian K. Vaughan, and it's illustrated by the lovely Fiona Staples, and they blew it out of the park for this one, guys. Volume 9 is really special because it's the last in the first arc of the series, so if you go on Brian K. Vaughan's website, or if you go to the Image Comics website, him and Fiona Staples have said repeatedly that Saga is supposed to be, I think it's supposed to be about like 152, 154 issues. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to break the story into 2 parts. So this Volume 9 is it's like the finale of the first half of the story. And after they wrote Volume 9, this one, and he had said it ahead of time, which I respect, that they were going to go on hiatus because it was a lot. 1, it was a lot. 2, it's the end of I know it's called Saga, but it was the end of a saga, you know? So they really wanted to take time and reflect and to really prepare and to properly write the second arc, which I respect. Here's the thing, guys. I don't mind when people go on hiatus. If you're a writer, if you're a creator, and you feel like you need to step away, like you need to take time off, I encourage that, you know, because you want them to be fresh. You want it to not feel like work, right? You want the story to feel authentic. And so when Brian K. Vaughan came out and said that he was going to go on hiatus, I was like, do it, man. You do you. Take this time, you know, because I would rather them take time than to put out like some half-ass work, you know? And so they're still on hiatus. I don't know. Back when the hiatus started, they said they were going to be gone for like a year. At this point, it's been like a year and a half. I'm not worried because I know it's going to come back because Saga is like one of their most popular series. But I'm just sitting here patiently waiting, not so patiently waiting for the next one. Yeah, since it's Volume 9, I really can't talk too much about it. If you know anything, like if you remember the review from Volume 1, you can already tell that things never go well for Marco and Alana. That's just the way this story is set up, you know? And so this is the big finale. I literally can't say anything Because one, we're gonna like I said back in our saga episode, we are gonna go through and we're gonna do all of the volumes. But then two, I just really don't want to spoil it for you guys. Like, it's so good. Please read Saga. It's so good. My God. Just check it. Please, just read it. That's all I'm going to say about this. Just read it. Okay? Okay. All right, y'all. You thought it was time for number one? Jokes! We've got jokes. We're going to talk about the honorable mentions. Books that didn't make it onto the list, but I still really enjoyed. For whatever reason, I'll go into them. But for reasons that they didn't make it onto the list, but I'll let you know, okay? So, number one on my honorable mentions list is a series called Mistborn. That's the book right now. Me and Anthony are trying to get everybody on. Mistborn is so good. It's so good. It's also written by Brando Sando, aka Brandon Sanderson. The first book, which was called The Final Empire, he released back in 2006. The reason why I didn't include this on my list is two reasons. One, I didn't want Brandon Sanderson to take up my whole top 5, okay? I'm just being honest. And number two, I'm still reading it. Like, all the other books, like my top 5, I've read, you know? But this series, I'm still in it. Like, I'm on book 3. It's actually, Mistborn is a trilogy of trilogies, so it's 3 sets of 3. The first 2 trilogies are out right now. I want to say after Stormlight 4 comes out, he's supposed to go back to Mistborn. So I'm on book 3 of trilogy 1 right now, and I just didn't feel like it would be fair if I included it on my top 5 when I'm not even done with the series yet, you know? So that's why it's on my honorable mentions list. It's so good. Go read it. Check it out. And next up on my honorable mentions list, I've got a book called Dune Messiah. So this is written by Frank Herbert. It was released all the way back in 1969. It is the second book in the Dune series. So it directly follows Dune proper. And so a couple of years ago was the first time I ever read Dune. There's a YouTuber that I really like named Comic Book Girl 19, and she did like a book club. So like you could be part of the book club, and week by week, she would go through whatever the reading assignments were and kind of break them down and talk about them. And Dune was a book that I've known about for a long time, but it's dense. Like, when I say it's fantasy and stuff has to be your thing, like, I really mean it. But here's the fun thing about Dune, or the thing that I really like about Dune. So when that book first came out, all the way back in, like, when did Dune come out? Like the late 50s, I think. The book Dune is the reason why the genre of science fiction exists. Before Dune, like, it wasn't a genre. And it wasn't until this crazy man, Frank Herbert, he wrote this long ass book called Dune. They had to create a whole new genre for it. And it's fun because if you're familiar with Dune, like if you read it and you like recognize the tropes and stuff in it, almost every type of fantasy story that you come across nowadays takes some inspiration from Dune. Like, when it's so funny, like just watching things or reading other things, I'm like, oh, he was a really big Dune fan, you know, like you can, because the world, I think a lot of it has to do with the world building. Like, the world building that Frank Herbert was able to do for Dune was so, like, it was so unheard of, like, when that book came out, and nothing existed like it during that time, you know, where everything from Star Wars to Brandon Sanderson, you watch like Mandalorian, you see like The Witcher, everything like that, like takes some inspiration from Dune. And it was a really cool experience getting to read like that's the source, you know, like what started it all, right? And so Dune Messiah, like I said, is the second book in the Dune series. And the Dune series is a lot. Like, that series went on for like a long, long time. And then even like after Frank Herbert died, like his son took over the series. And there's like so many books that take place in like the Dune universe. But Dune Messiah like directly follows Dune proper. The whole story of Dune, it's following this guy named Paul, aka Muad'Dib, aka the Kwisatz Haderach, on his planet Arrakis. after he becomes emperor. I mean, it's like slight spoilers, but I don't know how many of you are gonna go seek out this like 1,200 page book that's like as dense as the Bible. But in Dune proper, Paul becomes like the emperor of the universe, the planet, like their planet system, whatever. He becomes emperor, and he's like pretty much like the prophesied Messiah, that's known as Muad'Dib, aka the Kwisatz Haderach. There's a lot more that goes into it, but I'm not going into it right now because Dune by itself could be like a 3-episode series. But yeah, so the story follows Paul after he becomes emperor and, you know, like what's going on. This book was kind of short. It was only like 230 pages, which is really short compared to Dune proper, because Dune proper is like, I want to say like 1,300 pages. Like, it's really big. But the one thing I will say about Dune Messiah is, this book was so sad. My God, this book was so sad. And it was only like 220 pages. I was like, how can a book be so sad? And be this short, you know? But it was really good. The reason why I didn't include it on my top 5 is, I don't know, it just didn't stand up. It just didn't stand up to like Warbreaker or like Saga or what my number 1 is, you know? Like, I really did enjoy it. If you are a fan of Dune, I definitely would recommend, like, if you've read Dune, I would recommend checking out the second book because it is like such a short commitment. And it's funny because, like, I was talking with Anthony about it. It's funny because Dune, for what it is a really important book in terms of like science fiction, in terms of world building, in terms of like prophecy stories, stuff like that. But it's funny because for how big and deep Dune proper is, it's really just it's a one big setup. Like, it's a setup for the rest of the story. Like, he had to write Dune and get you invested in Dune characters and the story to then write Dune Messiah, which is starting to get into what the real story is. And then I'm assuming the book after Dune Messiah is the one where it really, like, the story proper, like, really kicks up. You know what I mean? I know that's really vague, but I can't really super go into it. Oh, here we go. So, yeah, so Dune Messiah, that was 1969, and then you have the next book called Children of Dune. That came out in 1976, and I'm assuming that Children of Dune, that's kind of where, like, the story is really going to kick up. I haven't read it. It is on my list of things to read this year, but I have to do some research because, like I said, I know a lot of people online will say there's somewhere in the series where there's like a big split where after Frank Herbert dies and, like I said, his son takes over. A lot of people didn't enjoy the son's, like, once the son took over as much. So I got to do some research, but I really do like Dune. It's pretty wild. Dune Messiah was also wild, also really sad, but yeah, that's why I made it onto my honorable mention list. And then I've got one more on my honorable mentions. It's another graphic novel, another comic, quote unquote comic graphic novel series called Battle Angel Alita. I really like Battle Angel Alita. If you remember, there was a movie, I want to say 2018 it was a movie, and I was actually, so I saw the movie before, like, I knew it was a comic series, like, I knew it was a graphic novel series or like a manga series, and it's like one of those, it's older, so it's like if you like science fiction stuff, if you like dystopian future stuff, and you are a manga fan, you've probably either heard of or read it, and for whatever reason, like, I just never got around to reading it, but on that Kindle Unlimited that I've talked about many a time, if you're a book reader, you should check out Kindle Unlimited. There's a lot of good books on there. Not sponsored, but all of the series, like the whole series, I think there's like 9 volumes. The whole series is on that Kindle Unlimited. So I was like, well, why not? Let me check it out. You know, at this time, I've completed volumes 1 and 2. I'm currently on volume 3, and kind of like with Mistborn, that's a reason why I didn't include it on my top 5, just because I'm not done with it, but it's good enough to make it onto the honorable mention list, you know? So It first debuted back in 1990, written by Yukito Kishiro, and it follows, she's a robo-cyborg named Alita. It's set in some dystopian future, and as the series goes on, you start to learn more and more about, like, the universe and the way the world is and stuff. But the story starts with her detached head, like, being found in a junkyard by this cyborg doctor named Ito. And Ito, like, rescues her head and attaches her body to a strong robo-cyborg body called a berserker body. And as the story goes on, you learn, like, what berserkers are and, like, why they're not around anymore. But it's interesting because Alita doesn't have any memories of her life before Ito, like, reattached her head. So she's really, it's a not a coming of age story, but it's following her, like, trying to figure out, like, who she is, like, what her personality is, like, how much of her is what people say she is versus, like, what she really feels. And it's funny because, like I said, she doesn't have any memories of her life before Ito found her head, but she, like, when she gets in a sticky situation where she has to fight somebody, she whips out these, like, old school martial art moves that, one, people haven't seen for a really, really long time, and two, she, like, kicks his ass. Like, she looks like a little, like, not a little girl, but she looks like a teenage girl, and she's over here flipping and kicking and punching and slicing, you know, and everyone's like, what? And so she becomes a bounty hunter. In this universe, they're called hunter killers, and you find out that Ito is also, like, a hunter killer, and her and Ito kind of go around and bounty hunt and all kind of shenanigans. It's a lot more than that, and I will say that, kind of like how I was saying before, I saw the movie before I started reading the manga, and in retrospect, I'm surprised at, like, how close the movies kept to the source material. A lot of times you run into, like, things that are based off of, well, when you see movies that are based off of a source material, be it a book or a manga or, you know, a comic, whatever, a lot of times they'll try to movie-fy it, you know, they'll take stuff out, they'll add more stuff to try and make the story more, I don't know, digestible in movie form, but they really did kind of stick close to the manga, which was pretty cool. I will say that the movies kind of covered, I don't know, maybe volumes 1 through 3. Like I said, I'm like halfway through volume 3 right now, and in volume 3, they're still doing stuff that, like, was in the movie. So I don't know. I would say, you know, like, sometimes you can see, like, an adaptation and then pick up where it leaves off, you know, like, if you've ever seen, like, Soul Eater is one of those animated things where it sticks really close to the source material, and then whenever it caught up, they kind of diverged from the source material. But you can literally watch Soul Eater till, like, I don't know, you can watch it like 3/4 of the way through, and then when it starts getting dumb, and you'll know when it starts getting dumb, but, like, when it starts getting dumb, you can literally go pick up the manga where the show left off and not be missing anything. Hunter x Hunter is another one of those where you can watch all of Hunter x Hunter until, like, well, what is that, the 2011, the later Hunter x Hunter. You can watch all of Hunter x Hunter until the end, and then you can pick up the manga where it ends, and you won't really be missing out on anything. And I do feel like Battle Angel Alita is kind of like that. You know, like, you could probably watch the movie and then, I don't know, like, I'm not there yet, but I would assume, like, you could probably watch the movie and pick up on volume 4 and not be missing out on too much, which I do really enjoy, because you do have to walk that fine line of adaptation versus, like, new material. But I do really enjoy when movies or, you know, like, animated series, whatever, when they're based off of a source material, they're able to really stick to it and translate it into film, into the big screen, which was really nice. But Battle Angel Alita, if you like robos, you like dystopian stuff, you like bounty hunting, check it out. I do enjoy it a lot. And finally, guys, we're going to number one. I'm gonna quick recap so you know where we're at. Number 5, we've got Jitterbug Perfume by Tom Robbins. Number 4, The Murmur of Bees by Sofia Segovia. Number 3, Warbreaker by Brando Sando. Number 2, Saga Volume 9 by Brian K. Vaughan. And drumroll please, I wish I had sound cues, y'all. I'm gonna look into it. Sound cues. Number 1, we've got Stormlight Archives, books number 1 through 3 by Brando Sando. Yeah. If you know me, a lot of you that listen know me personally. If you know me, you've heard me talk about these books. Stormlight Archives are maybe, and I say this without exaggeration, maybe the best thing I've ever read. And you know me, I read a lot. Like, I read a lot. Up until this time, I would have said, like, before we found Stormlight Archives, I probably would have said Dune. I maybe would have said Mr. Avalon. I maybe would have said Water for Elephants as my favorite book. But you read Way of Kings, you can throw all those out the window. You can put them out in the rain. I don't even care about them anymore. If it's that Stormlight Archives, I'm not here for it, okay? So, Stormlight Archives, like I said, written by Brandon Sanderson. There's 3 books out right now. There's Way of Kings, which first came out back in 2010. Second book, Words of Radiance, that came out 2014. And then Oathbringer, that came out late 2017. Stormlight Archives is set to be a 10-book series. You heard me right. 10-book series. And kind of like a saga situation, Brandon Sanderson has said that it's going to be kind of split into 2 parts. So you're going to have books 1 through 5 dealing with one thing, and then still set in the same universe, but then you're going to have books 6 through 10 dealing with something else. And so book 4 is actually set to come out this year. He recently gave a release date for book 4. It's supposed to come out in November. I literally cannot wait. Like, I'm so excited. I can't remember the last time that I've been waiting for a book. Maybe like Harry Potter. That was like the last time where I genuinely was excited and waiting for a next book in a series to come out, you know? And here's the thing with Stormlight. It's so much. Like, I don't even know what I can tell you. Because it's so much. And it gets so deep so quick, you know? And it's so good. So, I'll try to just give you a brief synopsis of what's going on, right? So, in Stormlight, we are in the universe we're on the planet called Roshar, and that's like the native planet for everybody that you meet. And on Roshar, you have these crazy storms that come every now and then. They're called high storms, and they're just kind of like, you know, how tornadoes or hurricanes have a season, and if you live in a place near tornadoes or hurricanes, you kind of just learn to live with it. That's kind of how high storms are. So the high storms, they always travel from east to west, and there's like crazy winds and crazy rain, but the people, you know, they just learn to live with it. You know, it's just a part of life, okay? But then you have, in Stormlight, you also do have, it's a fantasy book, so there's magic. Come on, guys. The magic is called Stormlight, right? And so some people, for whatever reason, are able to manipulate the Stormlight. And as the series goes on, you learn that it's like way deeper than snacks. Different people can manipulate it differently, or it affects them differently. You know, some people can fly, some people get super strength, some people can like make illusions, you know, like it just depends on the person and their situation. But pretty much the story is following, you've got like 1, 2, 3, pretty much like 3 mainish characters. You've got our boy Kaladin, aka Lord and Savior, aka Dat Boy, and when the series starts, he's in like a slave group, like a slave brigade, there's the word. And you don't know why he ended up being a slave. You learn that he used to be a soldier, so you're like, wait, why is he a slave now? And so you've got like regular slaves, which may be like, you know, people that maybe like owed money or, you know, ran away or whatever, something minor, and you'll get put in the slave brigade for X amount of time till you work off your debt, and then you can go do whatever. But in Kaladin's case, he has like a actual, they like branded his forehead. He has like a slave brand on his head because like apparently he did something really bad to where he's supposed to be a slave for the rest of his life, you know? And so you meet Kaladin and he's depressed and he's like, fuck my life and being a slave sucks. And yeah, the story, like I don't want to tell y'all too much because I encourage everybody to go read this. As much as I encourage y'all to read Saga, I encourage you to read Stormlight, okay? So that's all I'm going to say about Kaladin. And then our next main character, you've got Shallan. She's like a teenage age girl who obviously came from some type of tough background. She obviously does not have a good relationship with her dad or her brothers. Well, no, she has a good relationship with her brothers, just not her dad. Like, her dad is a dick. And she's just trying to figure out, like, what she wants to do in life, right? So she, the story starts with her going to a city called Kharbranth, and she's going to try and convince, the king's sister to be her ward. So she's pretty much just trying to figure out a way to where she doesn't have to be like a housewife for the rest of her life. Like, she wants to be a scholar. Like, she's really interested in history and how things work and animals and politics and all the intricacies there, you know? So she's doing what she thinks is her best shot at having a life where she can be a scholar, you know? So, and the king's sister is like, she's known for being a badass, for being like a badass scholar. Like, she's super smart. She doesn't give a fuck. She's like, she's beautiful. She's really stoic. And then she's like, I want to say she's like in her 30s, but she's like not even bothered about getting married. She's like, why do I need a husband? Like, I don't need a husband. I'm out here doing my own thing, you know? And Shallan's like, that is who I want to be. So she's seeking out Yasna to be her ward. And then the other main character we've got is this dude named Dalinar. And Dalinar, he is the king's uncle. And he is pretty much just trying to make Roshar a better place, you know? It's funny because, like, when you get introduced to him, like, the story just kind of drops you in what's going on, you know? Like, there's not really... like, as the series goes on, you start learning more backstory and getting flashbacks and stuff. But when it does start, it kind of just drops you in, and you realize that back in the day, Dalinar used to be known as the Blackthorn, and he was like a ferocious warrior. Like, everybody was scared of the Blackthorn. Like, back in the day, if, you know, there was like some squabbles going on and Dalinar showed up on your doorstep, you're like, oh shit. It just got real, you know, like, this is bad. But nowadays, Dalinar is trying to be like, he's trying to be a good guy, okay? He doesn't want to be known for bloodshed. He doesn't want to be known for being some crazy, you know, warrior that murders. He's trying to do things like diplomatically, you know, and he's struggling because people only recognize him or remember him from being the Blackthorn, and they don't really accept when he says that he's like a changed man or like wants to be a changed man now. They're like, okay, like, what game are you playing, you know? But Dalinar's like, no guys, like, I'm really trying to be legit, like, I'm trying to be nice, let me be nice. But yeah, so it's a lot. Like, I didn't even, like, I've told you about the people, but I didn't even tell you about like what's going on, you know? So, like, Way of Kings, it starts with a flashback. And in that flashback, you've got the king. And the king gets assassinated. Oh, no. Assassins. Yeah, we've got assassins. He gets assassinated. Or he gets assassinated. He gets assassinated by a group of people called the Parshendi. And so the Parshendi, so, okay. You've got humans. Everybody I mentioned so far is human. Kaladin, Shallan, Yasna, Dalinar. They're people. They're regular people. But then you have a group of beings called the Parshendi, where they're human-like. Like, they are tall, and they've got, like, glowy eyes, and they have armor that grows out of their skin. What? And they speak their own language, but, like, the couple of Parshendi that know English, or whatever language they're speaking, probably English, it's really like sing-songy, like their accent is really sing-songy, and like when the Parshendi communicate to each other, it's like through song, like it's in their language but through song. And to humans, that's really strange. But yeah, so the Parshendi and the humans were supposed to be forging an alliance. Like they've signed a treaty that they're like, okay guys, we're gonna like not kill each other anymore. But then like the night that the treaty was signed, for some reason, the Parshendi hire a dude to murder the king. And when the king gets murdered, that really sets into motion like what's going on in the series. So when that happens, pretty much Dalinar and all the homies are like, oh, fuck the Parshendi, like we're going to war, you know? And so they've been at war with the Parshendi for X amount of years, and the war, or like the fighting, takes place in a place where they're trying to harvest, what's it called? Well, okay. So the place where the fighting takes place is called the Shattered Plains, and it's pretty much just like, think of like a big open expanse of, not really desert, but like there's nothing that grows there. It's all cracked earth. It's all, there's like valleys, and think of like the Grand Canyon, how it's just like you got cliffs and you got valleys, but think of the Grand Canyon but like a whole place like that, okay? And so what they have to do is they have to build bridges. They have like these mobile bridges that they use to get over the crevices so they can like meet in the middle to fight the Parshendi, right? And then to bring it all back, Kaladin, his slave brigade, are some of the people that run these bridges. So they don't have, like, because the terrain is so bumpy and so, like, dangerous, there's no way to get, like, machines out there to move these bridges or to, like, place these bridges. So they literally just use disposable slaves to pick up and carry the bridges from point A to point B, and they'll put them down to let the troops and everybody to move across, and then the slaves will pick up the bridge and move it to the next place, and that continues all day long until the fighting is over for the day, right? And so, yeah, there's this big old war. They're fighting the Parshendi. Kaladin hates his life. Shallan kind of hates her life. Dalinar, he kind of hates his life. And yeah, bad things ensue. There's magic. There's assassinations. There's all kind of stuff. And the thing that is so great about Stormlight is like every time you think you learn a thing, you're like, wait, so if this means that, there's 3 more things I don't know, right? And like I said, we're 3 books in and you still don't know what's going on. Like you still don't know where this is going. You still don't know what's going to happen. And it's so good. Like it's so good, guys. And I literally just rambled for like 15 minutes about this, and I didn't even get into it. Like I didn't even tell y'all anything. That's the thing. Like there's so much in this series that I can't even tell you anything. Why am I talking about it then? I don't know. But Stormlight, check it out. Brando Sando, he's that boy. Like he's that man. Like I said, book 4 is set to come out this November, and I can't wait. I'm literally just trying to fill my time with books until November, because that's the only series that matters, if I'm being honest. But yeah, that was my top 5, guys. I know I did read a lot, and the thing is, even though I read 37 books, like I said, a good amount of those were rereads, which still count as reading books. But as far as like my top 5, I did really want to include all new books, you know? One thing I really like about reading is it can take you anywhere, you know? Like there's no one set genre. You don't have to stay in one genre. You can read a crazy book called Jitterbug Perfume about a king who meets a sex god and is trying to find a magic potion so he can live forever. But then you can also read something like Saga, which is magic and set in space and is illustrated like it's a comic. You know what I mean? But like they all are telling such different, wonderful stories, and like, you know, just depending on like where you are in life and what you like, you can find there's a book out there for you. You know what I mean? Like I know personally a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't like reading, or oh, I never found a book that I like. Like, it's out there. You just gotta find it, you know? And reading isn't just novels, you know? I mean, you can see from my top 5 list, reading can be comics, reading can be manga. It doesn't have to be a novel to be reading, but there is something out there for everybody. And I say all this to say, I hope that from listening to this podcast that you get interested in picking up a book and seeking out something that you like, you know? Like, there's something out there for you. Just like there's all these books out there for me, there's just as many out there for you. You just have to find them, you know? And that was 2019. I read a lot. I plan on reading more. And like I said, I have so many fun things planned for this podcast this year. 2020, it's the year. 2019 was a little rough, not gonna lie. 2020, though, that's gonna be our year. I hope to grow with you guys. I hope to, I don't know, just get bigger and better and learn more and read more and talk to you guys. And I can't wait. Let me know what you think about my top 5 list. Let me know what books you thought were going to be in my top 5 but weren't. If you have a top 5, let me know. Hit me up on Facebook. Hit me up on Insta. Hit me up on Twitter. I'm everywhere, guys. On Facebook, I'm pretty sure it's just the name, Almost Well Versed. Instagram, also Almost Well Versed. Hit me up on Twitter. I'm trying to be more active on Twitter. It's tough. I'm not good at Twitter, you know. But that's AWV Podcast. If you have any book recommendations for me that you want me to talk about this year, it's a good chance that I've read it already. And if it's a book that I haven't read, I'll check it out. You know, I'm always looking for new stuff to read. Last year, I really did try to like branch out from what I usually read. Because it's usually either fantasy or kind of like, not YA, but just kind of, you know, things like Water for Elephants, stuff like that. But I really try to branch out, read some more like autobiographies, read some mystery, some thrillers. So if you have any recommendations of anything, really, let me know. It might make it on an episode. And with that, guys, I'll see you next week. Bye.